We're good? Oh, yeah, we are.
Is this the net travel group or not? Are you all filled up?
I mean, we can take a couple. But, well, good morning. It's good to see you all here. Thank you for coming to listen to Reverend Dr. Mitri Raheb give his talk about his work and his ministry. My name is Pastor Amy Kinsley. I'm the associate pastor. We actually have three pastors here at St. John's. I'm the director of outreach. So we have Pastor Frank Espergren and Pastor John Haug also send their greetings to this group. We're so glad when we can host these things. I know we have a nice location with parking and things like that. That's a luxury. So when we can host, we like to do that. Note on the parking, if you saw the sign, it actually stays open till 2. We just couldn't find the numbers to put the right sign on there. So if you are in the garage or even in this lot, we'll close it. There'll be generous time after so that you can have conversation downstairs after the presentation up here. So we'll go back down for like some cheese and some fruit and other beverages, and then you can also purchase one of these new books that I'm sure Pastor Raheb will be talking about, The Politics of Persecution. So those are available downstairs, and you can sign them for us? Okay. What's that? Yes. Oh, $20. Okay. Yeah, so you can do cash or card or just other logistics. If you do need the restroom, there's one right out here. You can always ask me, or there are there St. John's people that could just raise their hand that know where other restrooms and things are. So you can kind of find those people if you are urgently needed, and this one is open. There's one, but I always think I'll better just take you to the restroom because it's like, but there is one right here. So, well, with that, I think, we'll be up here until around 12 or so, but there'll be a time for Q&A, and then we'll go downstairs and have time for more conversation. So I'd like to welcome Pastor Raheb to come up and speak.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor Amy, for your introduction and for hosting us this morning. I remember, I think it was maybe 8 years ago that we were here downstairs in the hall, and I guess 1 or 2 or 3 of you were at that time here. So can you hear me well, or it's okay? Okay. So if you have a problem hearing me, just please raise your hand, and our friends there, yeah, Eliseo, he will help for sure, just to make sure that everyone can hear me. What I thought to do, because some of you maybe are new to this topic, I thought I will focus on 3 things. So I will talk a bit about the situation of Christians in Palestine, and then I will talk a bit about the political situation, since also this church is a church that is well known for its social justice ministry. And then I will introduce our university and the work we are doing there. After that, my colleague Chris will take over and will say something about Bright Stars of Bethlehem, which is the support organization here in the U.S. And we have also with us our board member, Jeanette Kuhl. So if you have any questions, also go to her. She is the one overseeing all our work, basically here in the Bay Area and even beyond. And Louis, here is Louis, also one of our strong ambassadors here. Also, if you have any question, please don't hesitate to contact her. Also, we have a few other people from the Middle East. So Pastor Rula a Presbyterian pastor at Westminster, 5 blocks away from here. I knew her when she was a student, so good to see you again. You are lucky to have such a smart, energetic pastor here. And Maurice we were together in the Sunday school and not Sunday school, youth work for many years in Palestine. So we have that as well with his wife. And we studied both in Germany for a while, and now he lives here for 33 years. And then we have Charbel, who is from Lebanon as well, and works here with refugees, right? So you have all of these resource people here. So feel free to approach actually any of them. And I heard that Amy is taking a group to Palestine soon. January. So any of those travelers here? So 1, 2. Okay. 3, 4. Okay. If you haven't signed up for the trip, you can do it today, and you will get 15% deduction, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Just joking. Okay, but it's okay. It's okay. Great. Okay. So, Alicia, we will do it one by one. It is all, even the one slide, so we'll do it slowly. Okay, thank you. I guess, I'm not sure how aware you are about the situation of Christians in Palestine. I think many people don't know even that there are Christians in Palestine, right? And so often people are astonished that, there is something called Palestinian Christians. And one of my first book actually was I'm a Palestinian Christian was the title of that book. Just to tell the story, because at that time people had no idea about us, And I always like to remind people that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, Palestine, right? Not Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, just to make sure, right? And the Bible did not originate in the Bible Belt. Thanks God. Imagine, right? So Christians are indigenous in Palestine because this is where it's all started. But if you know the history of Palestine, unfortunately, it has been a history of continuous oppression. I mean, we had all the empires of the region came and occupied Palestine, from the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the Persians and the Greek and the Roman. I mean, think that Jesus himself actually was born under occupation, right? Not Israeli occupation, Roman occupation. And it continued, with the Ottomans and the British, and now we live under Israeli occupation. And because of that, the percentage of Christians actually kept dropping down, so that today only less than 2% of the population are Christians. And if we look about historic Palestine, if we zoom into Israel, what is today Israel, we found out that there are around 120,000 Palestinian Christians living inside the green line, inside Israel. They make 1.3% of the population. And we have in the West Bank around 47,000 Christians living there. They make 1.7% of the population. And if we look at those 47, around half of them, they live in and around Bethlehem, in the Bethlehem region. I'm saying that because I know, I'm not sure if you know, but Sacramento and Bethlehem are twin cities, right? And we have here somebody from the Twin City Association. So again, you can ask her about also this twin cities. This is why I will focus a bit more today on Bethlehem. So the concentration really is around Bethlehem. which means if Christianity will disappear from Bethlehem, it's over. This is unfortunately almost the case in Gaza. In the Gaza Strip, there are maybe less than 1,000 Christians left. So we know that within this generation, actually Christianity will cease to exist in the Gaza Strip. That's the open-air prison, and it's very tough, to survive there. Having said that, that does not mean that Christians actually are like on the margin of the society. Not at all. Christians in Palestine continue to play a leading role in our society. In a study we did recently, and you can find on our website, we found out that 45% of all non-governmental organizations in Palestine were started or established either by Christians or by churches, which means Christians play an important role in the civil society. So civil society is really very important, Christian contribution. We did last year another study, and we looked at the 296 Christian organizations in Palestine. There are 296, around a bit more than 100 in Jerusalem, around 100 in Bethlehem, and then the rest of the West Bank and Gaza. And what we found was really astonishing, because we found out that if we take them all together, they constitute the third largest employer in Palestine. The largest employer is the government. The second largest is UNRWA, the UN Relief and Work Agency, which really operates in the refugee camps. And then the third is the church-related organizations. They employ almost 10,000 people. And they inject into the Palestinian economy over $500 million through all of these organizations. The largest of these organizations is the Augusta Victoria Hospital in Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem, which is the Lutheran hospital. That is the largest in terms of budget, in terms of number of workers there. But what is also interesting, we found out that church-related organizations run almost 1/3 of the health services in the West Bank and Gaza. So if we look, for example, at Jerusalem as one example, in Jerusalem there are 4 main hospitals. There are 6 altogether, but 4 main. And out of the 4, you have 3 Christian hospitals and 1 Islamic hospital. So again, you can see they serve almost 250,000 people per year. 99.9% of those who are served are Muslims. So again, you can see here the role of the church, but also Christians play a role in the political sphere. So we have 10 Christian mayors, and usually in the Palestinian government we have 3 ministers in almost every government. And again, this testifies to the role of the Christian community. So maybe this is just to give you an overview of what is there. I move to the second part, which is the political situation. And I'm sure you saw this map before. If you look here to the left, 1946, what you see in green was land owned by Palestinians. And the white slots were land owned by the Jews at that time. 1947, the UN decided to divide Palestine into 2. Now, this was the British idea. most of the problems in the world were started by British. Right? In fact, in that same year, 1947, Britain did 3 massive sins. They divided Palestine along ethnic lines. They divided India, Pakistan along religious lines. And they divided South Africa along racial lines. It was 1948 that the apartheid legal system was established. And so all these 3 problems are still continuing today, and they were all started by the British. Just to give you an idea how crazy this is, in 1947, there was in Jerusalem one hospital for lepers. You know lepers, the stories in the Bible about the lepers. So until 1970, we had lepers in Palestine. So the last time that lepers was eradicated was 1970. And so 1947, there was this one hospital. And in this hospital, there were Jews, Christians, and Muslims living together. They were all lepers. The British came and said it's not good to have Jewish lepers together with Arab lepers. So they divided them, lepers, according to these ethnic lines. And so they sent the Palestinian lepers, the Arab Palestinian lepers, to Silwan in East Jerusalem, and they sent the Jewish lepers into a place in West Jerusalem. You can see how sick this mentality of divide and rule and of sectarianism. And since we have 2 friends here from Lebanon, they know all about sectarianism because Lebanon is built on a sectarian system that is not functioning, unfortunately. So that was 47, and the UN decided to give the Jewish population, who owned 5% of the land, 54% of historic Palestine. If you were Palestinian at that time, you would have said, this is unfair, right? This is what happened. Palestinians said, this is unfair. And so in 48, Israel took over actually 77% of historic Palestine, leaving the West Bank was connected then to Jordan, and the Gaza Strip connected to Egypt. And if you look today, you would feel that Palestine is evaporating, right? But what you don't see on this last map is that today in historic Palestine, we have more or less 6.5 million Jews and 6.5 million Arab Palestinian, which means you have 2 groups. They are the same size, but they don't control the land in equal. And this is really where the problem is. It's a problem about land and the resources. So if we move on and we zoom into the West Bank, this is now the West Bank. And if we look, everything you see in purple, this is Palestinian land, but under Israeli control, military control, which means we don't have control over it. And then you have these like turquoise, slots everywhere. And these are Jewish settlement built on Palestinian land. If you look carefully, you can recognize 2 vertical lines of settlement, one in the Jordan Valley, in the purple area, and one on the mountainous area. And then you have 3 horizontal lines there as well, which makes a grid, right? And the idea actually is that to make sure that there will be no Palestinian state that can be established. And the idea of this grid actually was imported by the late Sharon, the Prime Minister of Israel, Sharon. He went extra to South Africa to see how are the whites there controlling the blacks. And in South Africa, they have something called Bantustan, which means, you confine the blacks into an area with no resources, and you take all the prime land and you connect it together and disconnect the Bantustans from each other. So that was the idea that Sharon actually imported from South Africa to our land. And Bethlehem, unfortunately, I don't have here no, not so quick, not so quick. Yeah. So Bethlehem is down there. I'm not sure if I cannot show it to you now, but you see the Dead Sea? West of the Dead Sea, there is like a big brown spot. This is Bethlehem. And Bethlehem is the second most affected city by the wall. Okay? Now remember, this is where half of the Christian community lives. So whatever happens there will have a long-term effect on the Christians. The most affected city by the wall is the city called Qalqilia. You can see the arrow. And the white slots that you see, these are the Palestinian homes. And can you see the wall surrounding the town from all sides? So it's the whole town actually walled in. Okay? So that is the most affected city by the wall, and Bethlehem is the most affected. So now we will zoom into the Bethlehem area, and that is the next slide. Yeah, okay, yeah, great. Yeah, please, that would be great, yeah. So I took this because I thought since you have this twinning between Bethlehem and Sacramento, it would be good for the people in Sacramento to know what is happening to Bethlehem. Yeah, we have the same one back home, thank you. So what happened is that Israel, so this is the boundary of Bethlehem 1967 when Israel occupied Bethlehem. How many of you were to Palestine? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. I'm sure almost all of you floated on the Dead Sea, right? That's like an attraction. But I'm sure nobody told you that you were floating on Bethlehem land, Bethlehem water, right? Because if you see, you float usually here, this area. So that is Bethlehem water. Okay? So what happened to Bethlehem is that first Israel annexed the northern part of Bethlehem, so we lost this part. And then Israel built 19 settlements on Palestinian land. So you can see here, and then southwest. Why southwest? Because this is the most fertile area in the region. Bethlehem is like 2,500 foot above sea level. So we get a good amount of water. And the mountain range goes from north to south, so the rain stays here. This is why this is lush. This is desert, okay? And then you have these settlements here. Why here? Because they sit on the largest underground water aquifer in the West Bank. So Israel sits on the water, okay? And then you have these settlements on the sea. Why? Because they control tourism. When you go to float there, they get the money, not us. They exploit the minerals, not us, etc. And then this is military zone, which means I'm not allowed even to be there as Palestinians, though this is all Bethlehem. Okay? And then Israel, the next please. Yeah, you see Israel then built these so-called bypass roads. These are roads that connect Jewish settlements together, but disconnect Palestinian towns and villages. In this case, these two roads, they have different functions because we are not allowed anymore to build west of this road, nor are we allowed as Palestinians to build east of this road, which means Bethlehem is confined, right? And yeah, next please. This is the wall now that surrounds Bethlehem from the north, from the west, and now there is a wall here. And the last click, please. These are checkpoints, 29 checkpoints on Bethlehem land, disconnecting Palestinians from each other. And the last one, please. You can see these are the settlements that are being built right now. You can see now there is a whole set of settlements surrounding Bethlehem from the east, which means they are not really leaving much for us. If you take Area C, which is under full Israeli control, 66%, add to that the nature reserve, which is out of reach for us, so that's 20%. So 86% of the land of Bethlehem is not under our control. We control only 14% of our own land, and not even all of it. So that is the reality today in Bethlehem. So we move, please, to the next slide. So if you want to understand what's happening, the image of the Swiss cheese is actually tells it all. So Israel wants to get the cheese and pushing the Palestinian in the holes. And so Bethlehem basically is one of these holes in the Swiss cheese. So what does that mean to a city like Bethlehem? It's a strangled city. So if you want to move from Bethlehem to Jerusalem, you have the wall there. You cannot move freely. You need a permit to cross the wall. But imagine actually if you are an architect or a city planner who wants to plan a city and you cannot start new neighborhood, right? You cannot expand the city. So the whole little town actually is losing its character. Economically, it means if you cannot expand, if you cannot grow, you will have more unemployment. And Bethlehem has the highest unemployment rate in the West Bank, like 24.6%. So every fourth person is unemployed. In the States here, I guess right now it's 3.5% unemployed. Imagine if you lock people in a very closed area with no resources, what will happen? You will have more social tension, crime, drugs, and they are in the increase. And you know that because this country did this to the African American 100 years ago. And what you see today in the African American neighborhood is this policy done 100 years ago. Yeah. And I mean, psychologically, imagine if you grew up in a town with no green, because all the green is put on the Israeli side. So it's really the spring of our young people that is being taken away from them. For the Christians, it means, why bother? Let's go to the land of milk and honey. Canada. Right? Yeah, Canada. It's so. Bottom line: deteriorating quality of life, and this is not a catastrophe, natural catastrophe. This is not like a tsunami. It's not an earthquake. This is a man-made catastrophe. It is done on purpose It is done really to get rid of the people, that is, of the native people. So, is there a solution? People ask me always, so what is the solution? Okay, people talk about a two-state solution, but with all of these settlements, you ask yourself, how can you make two states there, right? So more and more people are talking about a one state, but that is also very far. So it's too late for a two states and too early for a one state. That's the problem we have. But you can think of federation, confederation, a Swiss model, not the Swiss cheese, but with cantons. These are the only 5 viable models. There is no 6th model. If none of those models is implemented, you end up with actually something we call occupation. But occupation doesn't say much. It is an oppressive system. If you want to understand what occupation is, it's a 3 actually oppressive system in one. Israel imported the idea of walls from Eastern Germany. You remember right? When President Reagan said, right, this is, right. It is, this one is taller and it's much longer, right? And second, they imported the idea of apartheid from South Africa and the idea of Indian reservations or native reservations from North America. And so they put the 3 in one, and this is what we call occupation. Sorry, I know it's a bit depressive, but bear with me for one more, and then we will go into the fun stuff, okay? So just for you to understand, Israel occupies the land. We saw that in the map, right? The resources, so the water, oil, the minerals, the stone, but also they control the electromagnetic field, the aviation, okay? So, for example, when President Obama came a few years ago to visit us, there were billboards everywhere, and these billboards looked like this, and on them, President Obama, don't bring your smartphone to Ramallah because we don't have 3G. Why we don't have 3G? Because we cannot have 3G unless Israel allows us to have 3G. I had to come 5 times to Washington to talk to Congress with the business community to ask Congress to push Israel to give us 3G. And they gave us that only 4 years ago when 3G was obsolete. So now when President Obama came to visit 2 months ago, he asked Israel in a very nice way to allow us to have 4G. Now, you have here 5G, right? So Israel promised by next year to give us 4G. But the same Palestinian company that is operating the 3G now is offering in Qatar already 5G before the US had 5G. So you can see how Israel really controls everything. But the most dangerous thing is that Israel controls the narrative. That's the most dangerous thing. Here, Rula can tell you more about that. A study done by a friend of mine, actually he's Lebanese, he passed away, and he wrote this book called The Real Bad Arabs, Real, R-E-E-L, real, And what he did, he looked at 1,100 Hollywood films carefully. And what did he find? He found that almost in all these films, whenever you had an Arab or a Palestinian, that person was the bad guy. But in every film of them, there was always, the Jewish guy was always the smart, the funny, the cute guy. Now, you don't notice that. I haven't noticed that until I read the book. But once you read the book, you start seeing every Hollywood film, almost every film, has something. I mean, look at it. I was watching, I think 2 days ago here, a film, and again they had, this thing. And this goes into the subconscious without you noticing it. And so you develop, this affinity to Israel, and you think Arabs are the bad people. Now, the biggest problem with the narrative comes from the Bible. Because for you, the Bible is good news, right? It's God sending His Son to our salvation. For Palestinians, if you read it as many crazy Christians do, or Jewish Christians do, you think this is bad news because God is taking your land, giving it as a present to another people who are oppressing you, and you should be happy about the oppression because that comes from God. I mean, right now, yesterday when I was listening to the news and President Biden talked about Armageddon, using the word Armageddon in itself is problematic, to say the least, because this plays into the hand of those crazy Christian Zionists, right? And they have been doing that now for 2,000 years, saying that Armageddon is around the corner, right? So that's the narrative. So why are we oppressed? Because the international community keep providing Israel with the hardware. From this country, they get $3.8 billion a year, billion. Every Israeli citizen gets more money from the American government than an American citizen in this country. And so that's the hardware, but the software is provided by these Christian Zionists, theologians and pastors who preach this kind of, always confusing the state of Israel with the Israelites of the Bible. And we need to crack that software. We need to crack that software. And so sometimes when people tell me, so what is your profession? I tell them I'm in the, software cracking business. This is what I do, and this is important. Okay, I guess we move to the third point. So we move now to a bit more hopeful. Because, if you see this, you feel it's a hopeless case. And we like here to quote Martin Luther when he said, so I think in this Lutheran setting, we can do that well. When he said, even if I knew that the world is coming to an end tomorrow, he said, I will go out today into the garden and plant. Right. As a German, he talked about apples. Apples, they don't do well in Palestine. They need a colder. So we talked about, we contextualize it, contextual theology, so it will become the olive trees. So that is really what we do. So we look, there is no solution in the near future. So we don't kid ourselves because the analysis are telling us so. And yet we are not discouraged, but on the contrary, we feel we need to do more now. And this is what actually brings us to our university. So Dar al-Kalima actually is the first and only university in Palestine with the focus on arts and culture. And we started that only 15 years ago. At that time, we started like a small center 25 years ago, and then we had a community college 15 years ago. And now, since last year, we have a full-fledged university with the focus on arts and culture. Our vision is that we might have life and have it abundantly. That is our vision statement. Maybe you recognize that, John 10:10, because the maps are telling us we are not going to have life, and definitely it's not going to be abundant. But we would like to focus on what Jesus said, that he came that we might have life and have it abundant. And the we includes Palestinian. Believe it or not, right? Because many people would like to exclude the Palestinians from the we, right? Our mission statement is to educate the next generation of creative leaders in Palestine. So that's our focus. We want to focus on creativity and on leadership. And we use arts and culture as the tool for social transformation. So not theology, because that doesn't make sense. We could have opened the seminary, but it doesn't make sense. We have our seminary in Lebanon. Rola is a graduate of that seminary. And we didn't want to do it through politics. I could have easily gone into politics, but I felt, no, our role actually is to invest in the creativity of our people and to use arts and culture as tools for social transformation. We have 5 colleges. So we have a college for architecture and design, which is the largest college. We have a college of fine arts, both visual and performing art. We have a college for cultural management, where we have sport, etc. We have the community college of 2 years, where we have things like culinary art, photography, and we have the graduate studies. Since this month, we started offering the first 2 new master programs. And this is, again, another exciting thing that is happening. So now we have a graduate school. So here maybe, right now we have around 500 students. And if we look at the breakdown, 24% are Christians, 76% Muslims. And we are really strong when it comes to gender equality. This is one of our DNA. If we look at the geographic outreach first, you can see we have students from all over the West Bank, but the majority they come between Ramallah and Hebron. So basically the southern half of the West Bank, this is where our strong base is. But we have also students in Israel. They come from inside Israel. This year, in fact, we have 2 students from the Golan Heights. You know, the Golan Heights are Syrian. This is Syria. And so they need 5 hours actually every day just to come to us. They come on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, so they come 5 hours and they go back on Saturday evening. If we look at gender, we see 50% of our board are women, 60% of the vice presidents are women. So I have 5 presidents, 3 are women, 2 are men. The deans, 50-50, staff, 49 are women, and students, 62% of our student body are women. And this is something that is really very, very important for us. Just to give you a few success stories, the first is Haneen. This is Haneen. Haneen comes from a very small village. Jeanette, I think you were with us, right, when we visited her? Yeah. You see, she comes from this small village, and the village is surrounded by Jewish settlements from all sides. And this is why her village is one of 3 villages in Palestine that up until today they don't have electricity. Why they don't have electricity? Because Israel doesn't allow the wires to reach her village. And so Haneen, when studying, was studying on oil lamp at night. And they are not allowed even to work on the road. So it's a dirt road. Janet remembers. So she has to walk on a dirt road for 1 mile to get just from her home to the main road to catch a bus and to come to the university. And imagine, in summer, it's very, very hot. This is in the desert. And in winter, it's muddy. But she was coming day after day. And she's the first generation college student to do contemporary art. Now, one day, there was from Holland, they donated to the village solar panels. They said, okay, if the Jewish settlers don't allow, then let's have solar panel. After a few months, the Israeli soldiers came and they took away the solar panel, saying the village should not have electricity. And I think when we were there were no solar panels, right? Yeah. Amazing, I mean. But Haneen said, we will not give up. So she started actually working with the women of the village, her mother and her aunt and her grandmother, and we met with the women group when you were there. These are very strong women. Never went to college, but they were really fighters. And they went to the Israeli High Court and demanded for the solar panels to be brought back, and they succeeded. You know? So, and really they succeeded thanks to Haneen. So if you empower one woman, and that woman really takes leadership, this is what you can do. And Haneen is a great example of that. Let's take the next example, which is Wissam. Wissam actually came to study film, and he comes from the largest refugee camp in Bethlehem, called Dehisha Refugee Camp. He did a film about the refugee camp where he lives. But it's a very funny film. You have to see it. It's called Ambiance. You can see the trailer on the internet. But that film won the 3rd prize at Cannes Film Festival. You know Cannes Film Festival? One of the top 3 film festivals worldwide. And so imagine from the refugee camp to the red carpet, which you see him there on the red carpet. That is actually the transformation that we are talking about. And actually, he was invited by Hollywood 3 years ago. They have a program at Hollywood for emerging filmmakers. And so he was able to come actually to Los Angeles and stayed with one of our board members, with Andrew, for a week. They had like a training for these emerging filmmakers. Talking about film, I'm not sure if any one of you had a chance to watch The Present on Netflix. Anyone? So if you haven't, look it up. It is on Netflix. It's called The Present, like the gift. And it talks about a man who wants to buy a present for his wife on her birthday, and he takes his daughter from Bethlehem to Jerusalem, and then on the way back with the gift, they are stuck at the checkpoint. And this is the film. What's the film? This film won the BAFTA award, which is compared with Oscar here, and 9 other awards. It's a 30 minutes film. 8 of our students actually worked on that film. And again, you can see if you empower these young people, you know, their films are now on Netflix. Let's see another success story. Here, okay, the present. Yeah, this is it. You see all the awards that they got. Yeah. Another success story is Honey. That's her name, but she's also a honey. Honey grew up in our children Sunday school, in our youth work, and her dream was to start a first female soccer team in Palestine. That was 15 years ago. Nobody thought that would be possible. But she gathered a group of like 20 young women, Muslims as well as Christians, some from very conservative background, and yet they started the first female soccer team. Today we have in Palestine 22 female soccer team, thanks actually to Honey. She became she became the first captain of the national soccer team. And now, actually, she was recruited by FIFA. You know FIFA? Yeah, so she lives now in Zurich, and she is FIFA's ambassador for sport, for peace through sport. A great leader that we are proud of her. But, you know, at heart, I'm a theologian. And theology is really my hobby, so this is why I like writing books. And this is just the latest book that you see downstairs, and there are more in the pipeline, so stay tuned. But there are 3 important theological documents that we have worked on that I would like to mention, and maybe if you have time you can look them up. One is called From the Nile to the Euphrates, The Call of Faith and Citizenship. And this talks about the Christians in the Middle East at large. It was written by a group of, you know, Lebanese, Egyptian, Palestinian, Jordanian, Syrian Christians. We launched that 2014 in Lebanon as a university. 2009, we wrote the Kairos Palestine document. I'm not sure how many are familiar with the Kairos Palestine document. Is really to deal with the issue of how to deal with the Israeli occupation from a theological perspective. And the third document came exactly 1 year ago, on September 28th last year. We launched it also in Lebanon, in Beirut. It's called We Choose Abundant Life, Christians in the Middle East Towards Renewed Theological, Social, and Political Choices. By the name We Choose Abundant Life, you can see the connection to our vision statement, right? And we have, as any university in this country, we have also a university press. We have over 50 books that we have published, and most of them are on Amazon and Kindle downloadable. And 3 years ago, we started a center in Gaza, a training center. So we have there 120 students in Gaza that are studying there. And you can see every month in Gaza, we have actually a photo or an art exhibition in Gaza. When you think of Gaza, you don't think of creativity, but these are some of the most active people. Beside the academic work, we have also a ministry with kids. We have, before Corona, we had over 2,000 kids coming every week to participating in our program, and we have an older adult program called Ajial. Okay, I think we stop here because I will leave this now to my colleague, Chris. She will take over. Chris is our new executive director for Bright Stars of Bethlehem. And Chris, it's your turn. Okay, yeah, let's watch the movie. I care deeply about this place. This is my home. With the partnership with Bright Stars of Bethlehem, we can make this place a home for thousands of young Palestinians. Half of the Palestinian people are youth. We want to reach them. They are the potential of Palestine, and they are our future. Our mission is to educate the next generation of creative leaders for Palestine. Through this education, we give our students the tool not only to survive, but to thrive in life and in society.
Dar al-Kalima is a place to be more free. That's where I think it's the most important thing to have in your education, how to think freely. They teach you how to prove that you can. Give us more opportunity to know the world better and to decide which way we want to go.
This university is a direct answer to the shortage of institutions of higher education with a focus on arts and culture in Palestine.
The uniqueness of Dar al-Kalima University College is that its mandate is to provide programs in visual and performing arts, cultural heritage, and tourism studies and design. We are working on creativity, we are working on art, we are working on the inside, the human spirit. And we believe that they are our ambassadors.
We envision that our alumni will be the future creative leaders in Palestine. They will be the peacemakers, and they will be the agents of social change.
Dar al-Kalima was a turning point for me as a person because after 12 years of one system of education at school where you just receive information, it was this time for me to express myself, to experience other subjects. Teachers at Dar al-Kalima let you think for yourself, have your own opinions, your own thoughts, your own ideas.
This place matters. It matters to me, it matters to our students, it matters to our community. Dar al-Kalima is work in progress. Your support to Bright Stars of Bethlehem matters.
Thank you, Pastor Amy, for having us here today. Again, my name is Chris, and I'm the Executive Director of Bright Stars of Bethlehem. I'd like to start out by saying how honored I am to work for a world changer, let's give him another. So my question for you is, with a raise of hands, how many of you would have it in your heart to want to change the world? Yes, make the world a better place. I think we all do, right? So right before the pandemic, maybe 6 months before, I was praying very, very steadfastly to find a role where I could be a world changer. And specifically, I was praying for a role that God would help me to use my fundraising background and my gifts, my program development gifts. Also, a job that would be based in faith, that would be working with a university of some type, but also a role that would allow me to work with the marginalized and give me a love in my heart for a certain marginalized people group. And I was interviewing for a lot of jobs. This is right before the pandemic hit, right? And I was applying for jobs back in California. I had worked at a university in California. I had worked with program development with at-risk teens. I had worked with trauma, kids that had dealt with trauma. I had all these, passions in my heart and all these specifics that I was praying for with this job. And never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that God would answer every single one of those aspects. I got an email in my inbox just out of the blue. And to this day, we don't know where it came from or how they got my email address. But it was from an executive search firm looking to fill this role at Bright Stars of Bethlehem. When I first started talking, I was very kind of intimidated by the fact that I knew nothing about the Middle East. I, again, knew a lot about program development and fundraising and stuff like that, but I knew not one thing. And I'm going to be honest, I was extremely ignorant. And I think, sadly, most of us in the U.S. are ignorant to the issues, aren't we? And I think there's so many, as you probably know, myths about what's going on in Palestine. And I think I grew up Catholic and then got kooky, went Lutheran, and then went into very deeply into the evangelical world. And I realize now that through osmosis, I had this sense of Zionism, really, the sense of a lot of things that weren't true. And I read while I was interviewing, I read 2 or 3 books by Mitri. And then I started thinking, oh my gosh, the truth started seeping into my heart. And I thought, this is unjust. This is wrong. And again, with my background, I really worked a lot with at-risk teens, and I developed programs. And I always loved to work with teens. I actually worked in the juvenile lockup with teens. And what I've found over the years is that one of the things that was missing for these kids that were really suffering with trauma and everything else was that they didn't have a healthy, hobby. And when I talked to their parents, I talked to them, they're like, oh, so-and-so used to do artwork, so-and-so used to dance or sing, right? And when I went into the lockup facility, some of these young people were starting to get back to that very root beauty and healing force that is the arts, right? So you can imagine my excitement when I took on this role, also my intimidation, but my excitement. And God helped me to over the last. It's been interesting because for 2.5 years I was unable to travel to Palestine. And I'm a storyteller. I believe in the power of storytelling and the connection of storytelling to being able to raise money, because it's the heart, it's the stories that make a difference, And the slogan at Bright Stars of Bethlehem is "Hope is what we do." And so slowly over time, I started Zoom calling with these young people in Palestine, which is so crazy that we can do that, right? They could be so far away. I started Zoom calling. I started talking to the professors, but I also started talking to all these ambassadors across the United States that we have on our team. We have about 50 people across the United States that volunteer with us that have been there. And again, raise your hand if you've been to Palestine. A few of you. So these folks lent me their stories, and then I interviewed the students, and then I tried to work online, as you've all been watching these webinars, right? And tried to tell the stories. But I'm so excited to tell you that in March of this past year, I was able to go on my first trip to Palestine. And before I'd like to share some more student stories, if that's okay. But before I do that, I'd like to reiterate what our mission is. Our mission is to raise awareness and support for Dar al-Kalima University, the first and only university of arts and culture in all of Palestine. And we recently tweaked our mission statement because we wanted to emphasize that it's in all of Palestine, because we have this new satellite program in Gaza, which is so very exciting, right? Do you have the clicker thing? Let's grab that. Thank you. Is he doing it? Oh, is he up there? Okay. Oh, I don't need the pointy thing. Okay, so can we go to the next slide? There we go. Okay, so early on, I met Carla on Zoom calls, and I interviewed her, and she was really, really struggling to try to pay for her tuition. Now, Carla's story is that when she was 11 months old, her home was destroyed by Israeli rockets in Beit Jala, and her father's best friend was protecting him, and the best friend died in this situation. They destroyed the house, and they had to start over all over again and build a home or move to Bethlehem. At which time her dad ended up getting a job in food service at a local university. But of course, in the pandemic, the universities were closed, most of them, and he didn't have any income. So the family was very worried. She's a Palestinian Christian. We ended up awarding, through Bright Stars of Bethlehem, awarding Carla the very first Women of Vision scholarship. It's an endowed scholarship program. So when I went to Palestine, Carla and I met. She said, I want to take you to coffee, and I want to show you a surprise. So she took me to coffee, and then she took me to her aunt's boutique, and then she said, let's go in the back. We went in the back, and she showed me this little nail salon that her aunt set up for her so she can make extra money, and that's a creative thing. And then she did my nails for me. Did a great job. But this is another example of the incredible effervescence and the hope and the entrepreneurial spirit that I see in the Palestinian young people, because they really have to be creative and think outside of the box. And of course, when you're in the arts, we're really trying to work on a way to integrate entrepreneurialism into the DNA of all of the curriculum. And there's another project coming up later. We're working on an entrepreneurial hub, which is really exciting. So that's Carla. Enes is a young man who is a singer, and he plays music. He graduated with a certificate, and then now he's going on for his bachelor's degree in music. Last spring, when there was the violence at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, he was detained because he was just trying to worship at the mosque. And he was taken in, and he was beat up quite severely. But you can see a picture of him here. He's being taken away. But do you see a smile on his face? That's an example of creative resistance that's happening with these young people. That's an example of the hope. And I was able to meet him as well when I went to visit. We're not going to play the video. Okay. The two of them, she was translating for him, and just so incredible. He played a song for us. And he's written songs about Palestine as well. Okay, this is my very favorite story of all my stories I have so far. When I was there, I went into the university, and Mitri kindly gave me a tour throughout the whole university. And I was very interested to see the film labs, because my daughter's a filmmaker. I feel very strongly about the power of narrative storytelling through film. And these two young ladies were in there, kind of to our surprise. Now, they're both graduates, but the university lets the graduates use all of the equipment after they graduate, which is awesome. So we went in there, and I said, there's some kind of artwork up on the editing screen. And I said, what are you working on? And Mitri translated. They were very excited, and they talked about this compelling story where there is a Israeli documentarian who decided to do a documentary about the Palestinian prisoners in the Israeli prisons. And get this, it was an Israeli documentarian. But of course, he's the only one who has, the entree to get in there, and right? And so the Palestinian filmmaker world, they were all like a little suspect, like, what's going to happen with this film? He's like, oh, don't worry, I'm going to tell a really good, I'm going to tell your narrative. Well, when they saw the film, they're like, that is not our narrative, and they were very upset. So these two brave young women set about, with all of the skills that they learned at Dar al-Kalima University in the filmmaking program, they set about to deconstruct this Israeli filmmaker's film, and then interview a Palestinian classmate who's older. His name is Munir. He's 37. He was in a prison for 7 years. So he had his own story of trauma and what happened to him there. And he's also an artist. So they integrated his artwork and his videos in there. Not only that, the young lady in the yellow, she brought up the YouTube video of her being dragged across the ground and being detained. And also, somehow she got a hold of the footage from her attorney when she was being detained, and you saw the Israeli man, pounding his fist, and she's cowering in the corner crying. And they are integrating that into their new film. And they're going to get the film with English subtitles, and I'd love to show it all to you sometime. I'm going to hopefully get it soon. But I said, ladies, how on earth did you get permission to do that, And they got very animated, and they said, we don't need permission. That is our narrative, right? Right, and I said, that's creative resistance right there. That is an example of what's being learned at this very special place. And again, I've worked at universities, I've worked in education for decades, and I have never seen anything like what I've seen at this university. And again, stay tuned about that, seeing that film. Okay, this last story. I usually have business cards with his painting. You see the painting on the left? We commissioned him to paint that. His early paintings were very dark and very, like pencil drawing, and very, very sad and somber, like children hanging on to their mother. He's been through how many wars in Gaza? He lives in Gaza. And his name is Ismail, and we commissioned him to paint that a couple years ago. Then most recently, when we did a fundraiser and a raffle, we had him do another painting. The theme of that painting was "Be the Key, Unlock Hope for the Next Generation of Creative Leaders in Palestine." I'm happy to tell you that about a month ago, Ismail's dream was to do his art in Europe, and he just got an invitation from a nonprofit in Stockholm, Sweden, and he got out through Egypt, and he's doing his artwork there. So Carla is a world changer. The two young ladies in the editing bay are world changers. Ismail is a world changer. Mitri's a world changer. I'm happy to say, and humbly, that I'm a world changer because of my association with Bright Stars of Bethlehem. And our friends here who are incredible, I don't see them, I think they went downstairs, but Jeanette and Lois, who are in the Bay Area, we have a very robust group in the Bay Area that help us raise funds for Bright Stars of Bethlehem. They're world changers, and any of you that are donors, I want to thank you for being a world changer. And I want to invite you today, I'm not shy, to be a fundraiser. I used to, early in my fundraising days, it was kind of scary, and friends now say, Chris, isn't it hard to ask people for money? You kind of feel like you're begging for money, and in this case, absolutely not, because I feel like I'm inviting you in to partnership. And right now, today, I'm not giving you a hard sell on asking you for money for Bright Stars. If you'd like to donate, we'd be blessed by that. But I want you to consider, and maybe prayerfully consider, partnering with us in some way. And that could be volunteering. We'd love to get a group going here in Sacramento of folks that care about this work. But also, perhaps you'd like to pray for us. We need that. We need prayers all the time. But donations are welcome. And, we'd love to get you on our email list, because that'll keep you updated. Maybe I'll get a list going downstairs. But I just really want you to understand, what Mitri is saying, all of these incredible challenges that are happening. I just want to encourage each of you, because there's something very special happening there, and there is hope being unlocked, hope that's happening, and I do see the world changing for the better. I do believe that the world is a better place because of the work of Reverend Dr. Mitri Raheb and what's going on at this university. So thank you for being here today. You can get my email address. I'd be glad to talk to any of you anytime. Also, we'd love to partner with churches, because we have 53 church partners. And if any of you are in a different church, would love to talk to your pastor, with the missions groups. Oh, I forgot about this. We have a resource on our website. One of our board members helps with, we call it authentic travel. And she doesn't set up the tours, but she helps with advice and then getting churches and groups to Dar al-Kalima. They do a wonderful job of, the culinary students will feed you. You can go on a tour. You can meet the students. I think it's really important to get there, especially as church groups, to get there and to see what's going on, and they would welcome you there. So God bless each of you, and thank you so much for being here. Welcome any questions for Dr. Raheb.
Can we get the handheld mic? It's good.
Okay. Why do people still live in Gaza?
Because that's their home. That's their home. And where can they go? It's not like the world is open for them as well. So some they love because that's their home, others because they are stuck there, And many would love to go back to their original homes that they were kicked off from, which is today in Israel. So you have different people, different ideas.
Over here first, and then, okay. Thank you.
The first 75% of what you said today, I heard 35 years ago when I led a group of people to go on a tour from my congregation And, but it was the same story. And I think you could have, the one you gave then, could just about well given today. The last 25 minutes of what you told today was your vision, you know, changes that are taking place. At the time, the impression many of us had was that it was the influence of the United States that that strengthened the continuation of all those stories and even enlarged it. Do you feel, is that still, the influence of the United States, is that still that important?
I mean, you know, definitely. I talked about the British Empire and all the problems they created. The thing is that the US inherited that empire with all its, with the whole package. And so, yeah, I mean, the role of the US is very crucial. Unfortunately, you know, I know many people in Congress, and, you know, every other year they have to run for office, and they need money. And unfortunately, their main interest, most of them, is to be re-elected, not necessarily for justice to prevail in the world, you know. So I guess you need here to do a better job in advocating to your Congress. Because, I mean, the system here, I think, is problematic. Because the system is, I mean, thinking of many of those who run here for presidency, you know, I mean, you have here excellent people, smart people, but they are not necessarily always the people that are elected. You know, who is elected as president is the one who can raise the biggest amount of money. And so follow the money. And unfortunately, money doesn't lead to justice most of the time. So that's the problem.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I specifically came because I really didn't have an opinion one way or the other. I don't know enough. I recognize I don't know enough about the situation there, and so I'm coming to educate myself so that I can know. But one thing that it took me a minute to kind of connect the dots, and it wasn't until the young woman stood up and said about the establishment of the art and culture piece as a university, was that because of your, and I'm assuming yours also, the experience that the children have been so impacted by what is going on through the conflict that they lost a sense of creativity, and so therefore this university is kind of restoring that to bring healing in the land, for the lack of a better word, and then also to use that as a tool to create a narrative to tell their story of what's going on there to the rest of the world on a global scale. Is that the gist of it? Okay. That's wonderful, and that's fabulous, and I think that that's great, because my next question is, okay, so once these students graduate from the university, are they going to, take their gifts and talents and try and establish it there?
Right.
To
there.
Influence the leadership there, or to take it, to go out?
No, mainly there.
Mainly there.
Mainly there. Some go out, but very small number.
So it's to educate the people there,
right,
so that they're aware,
right,
of what's going on there.
Right.
Okay.
You want to say something?
Well, I'd like you to tell the story about your daughter. Oh, sorry. About your daughter, about the painting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that story exemplifies this.
Yeah, I mean, okay, Chris wants me to tell you a story. So, yeah, during the second Intifada, we were under curfew for 40 days in Bethlehem. The first 14 days we couldn't get out of our homes, and then Israel started opening for 3 hours where people could go out quickly to buy grocery, come back. And so one day when they lifted up the curfew, my wife and daughter, the youngest daughter, Tala, they wanted to visit their grandma just to make sure she's okay and to get her some groceries, etc. And after 2 hours, the Israeli announced the curfew is reimposed. And so they came running back home. But the Israeli soldiers started shooting, and one bullet came very close to my daughter, like maybe 2.5 feet away from her. And she was really scared to death. And I could tell that when she came back, because she's a very talkative person. But she couldn't speak one single word for over 4 hours. And then after 4 hours, she took some paper, some crayons, and she threw herself on the carpet and started drawing. And she drew what happened to them. So she had herself and her ma. She had like a hat like that on her head. And then the bullet was like as big as her in the picture, which shows the impact. But it showed me that actually she could not talk until she drew. And that is really the power of the art, for people. As you said, it's therapy, it's healing, but also it's a way to communicate what people feel and think. So this is why we focus on that. But most of the people, they go to Palestine because that is the Holy Land, to run where Jesus walked. This is why they go there. Some, they go interested in, in the sun and the sea, maybe, but the majority are really pilgrims. Right. Right. Would like to speak to that.
And that's what I think when I do this with you. I don't have my thing on.
Yeah.
I actually prayed while I was praying to get, to have a role in a position. I prayed specifically during that time that God would bring me to the Holy Land, that I'd be able to travel to the Holy Land, which I thought it was, like you said. Well, what I think is happening here in the United States is the marketing is it completely, and what happens is they take people to, and what we call the, not the living stones, but the stones, the buildings, right? And then we miss the living stones. So I also believe, sadly, and I've only been basically to the university. I went on a 5-day trip and I stayed most of the time there. But I think there's a lot of fear-driven tactics used by the tour guides, so that when people do go to the Holy Lands, they're like, "Oh, don't go to Hebron," or don't, you don't want to get out of the bus here. And there's just a lot of fear. Like there's just so much danger you're going to get shot at, which is propaganda, in my opinion. So I would say that the majority of the Holy Land travel that happens, they're missing the most beautiful, beautiful aspects in these precious Palestinian people. They're missing, what is really the living stones, the people that have been in Palestine for thousands of years. Mitri always says that, or people sometimes ask, well, when did you convert to Christianity, your people? Well, it's like they say, over 2,000 years ago. And Mitri likes to say that his grandma's all the way back babysat for Jesus. So, yeah. Thank you.
Mitri, I have a question about collaboration. How Dar al-Kalima University is collaborating with other Palestinian universities, and how you, as kind of theological leader, collaborates with other Palestinian liberation theological institutes like Sabil also.
Yeah, I mean, we have cooperation with several Palestinian universities in different projects.
Can students cross-register or anything?
Not cross-register, but for example, we are working with the university in Hebron on one project. So our teachers and their teachers meet, students and their students meet, etc. And in terms of with Sabil and other theologians, definitely we have strong connections. I mean, we are at the end of the day a small community, and so we need to work together. We are working together. Definitely. Rula, and then here, and then maybe we can.
Yeah, this is not a question, actually. It's a statement. I appreciate that, Dr. Raheb, you talked about the hardware and the software. And it's very important to support those endeavors with our money, with advocacy. But in my opinion, as an Arab who lived most of my life in Lebanon and now I live here, the most important asset that you all have that you may not be aware of is your voice. Your ability to speak up for yourselves and talk to your government and tell them things. In the Arab world, we cannot do that. Coming from Lebanon, we really can't. Our voices won't go anywhere. We have a responsibility, each one of us. It's our churches, it's the big organizations, but each single one of us as Christians, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves and educate others. And forgive me, I'm a preacher, I started preaching now. But what you can do now today is get one of Dr. Mitri's books. They're all over Amazon. Talk to your friends in churches about them. Let them educate themselves. How many times have you studied a book in your churches written by an Arab, a Palestinian? I mean, those things, they go against the culture, and this is what we're hoping to change. We're hoping to change the narrative, the theology, the way people think. I mean, yes, we need to do things at the higher level, but we also, each one of us, need to do our own job. So that's really my invitation. I was hoping one of you would say that. Each one of us, we need to get those books. Tell your friends about those books. Give them gifts for Christmas. Christmas is coming. Really, we need to change the narrative. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rula. And again, I mean, you have all of these resource people here. I mean, I'm here just now for 2 hours, but you have all of these resource people here that you can approach anytime. And
so thank you so much for being here again after several years. And you sure got our attention the last visit here. Thank you so much. 2 weeks ago, this morning, I got onto the Land Institute's Prairie Fest in Salina, Kansas, online. And that's a regenerative agriculture organization. It's a blend of science and culture with a global reach. They had the poet laureate of Kansas. They had, world-renowned musician Paul Winter. It's in an old barn out on the Prairie. I went to school at Bethany, about 15 miles from there, the Lutheran college. And when I tuned in, this person wasn't on the program, but following up on Pastor Gabi's question, in other universities, the first speaker was Dr. Omar Tesdell, Birzeit University, professor of geography, yes, and talking about science and very interesting and all the challenges of, the Middle East and Palestine. And then he talked a lot about having to work under occupation. And it was very bold and very courageous. So I want at least one book, because I'll be there in 2 weeks, to take back and put in their library that they have there at the Land Institute. So
thank you. And Omar is a great young man, Actually, he started his work in Palestine at our university. He was an intern for several months, we worked together on a booklet on Bethlehem and the wall. So many of the maps that you saw, we worked on together with Omar many years ago.
My question is very basic. You've talked about in the beginning of the school and the students, and you called it gender equality. And so the women do they still need to wear head coverings and that type of thing in school? Or
no.
I see a lot of them, they don't have it. And so you have Muslim, do you have any Arab, just straight Arab students? Because they're more restrictive, I understand.
Yeah, some women you could see they have a headscarf, others not. Christians usually, Christians don't do that, but not all Muslims do. And this is, by the way, a new phenomena. When we grew up, Maurice and I, there were no women with headscarf running around.
Well, when I was a child, we wore hats to church.
No,
here in this country.
In churches, during communion, sometimes women put that on there, but that's also over. But you see, this is influence coming from Saudi Arabia and from Iran. It's not really something that is connected to Palestine.
I was so surprised when I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe I'll say it this way so I can. Well, as Mitri mentioned, I'm also Palestinian Christian. I don't have necessarily a question, maybe a question later, but I see the problem as someone said, like it's, I think, two-pronged issues. Like one is money and influence, but the other one is theological kind of problem or issue with how churches perceive the state of Israel and even the Bible itself. That's how where I concentrate sometimes my discussions with other people. So we go to an evangelical church. We sin, because there are lots of sometimes Zionist teachings, but I don't shy away from discussing things with, like last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, the pastor was talking about the end times and all this stuff and about Israel, and I sent an email to the executive pastor. So what is this? Is this a Christian message or is it a Zionist message? So I think is a problem with the understanding of prophecies and end times. And when, I don't know if Mitri agrees with me, but most of the prophecies of the Bible have been fulfilled in 70 AD, and people are just waiting for something to happen. And based on this, that's how kind of churches are supporting Israel, because they think something is going to happen and they need to really help that happening. So to happen. So I think it's one big problem in churches, and it makes people look at the Arabs or Palestinians as enemies of God. In fact, I didn't realize that, but with the time I started realizing that's what really it felt, that you are an enemy of God because you are in a way of prophecies being fulfilled as the Bible says. And that's really tough. It's really, it's hurtful. It puts people down, and that's even as a Christian, you feel like This feeling is terrible, I can tell you. Yeah, so maybe Pastor Mitri can talk about this too. I'm actually almost like done. I'm writing a book about the temple. Is that the future temple? Is that truth or fiction? So it's just because I think this is just such an important topic because people are just, when they talk about it, like teachers and Christians say, oh, this is going to happen. But when I look at it, it's like, is this what we believe as Christians? When Jesus came and gave his life and, as a ransom, once and for all? Are we waiting for another temple to be rebuilt, sacrifices? It's a theological, I guess, issue, but maybe you can talk about it, Mitri, Pastor Mitri.
If you want to address that now or later. I know, thank you for that. And I think we need to move downstairs, but we're going to go downstairs for a little while. I know Mitri has to go actually to Palo Alto later and stuff, so there's like a lot of, your day is not done. So thank you for the time you gave this morning. This trip that we're leading in January, this will be my first time running a trip, but I've actually been there 4 times. I met you first in 2005 with our seminary from LSTC, the Lutheran seminary in Chicago, and so I'm looking forward to actually taking people there to see the real living stones, Palestinian tour agency. So if you are going to go on a trip, make sure you ask some questions before you do, so you get to actually engage with real people and hear the real story, or at least hear some of it. So, but I was going to say, Southeast Michigan, the Lutheran church there actually did a resolution saying that the theological framework for Christian Zionism is a heresy as far as the Lutheran church is concerned. And so I don't know if the full Lutheran church did, but definitely the local church there is very committed to that relationship with the churches in Jordan and the Holy Land. So, so thank you all. Okay, one last one, but then we have to go downstairs and then there will be time to chat and get a book and stuff downstairs.
My name's Jo Guzman, and it's my 47th year as an educator. And number one, this place should have been full. More people should have heard your message, so my recommendation, as I'm a bilingual education cross-cultural specialist, I think your next session should be what you had on your slide. It should be called Occupation, Systematic Oppression, Walls, Apartheid, and Reservations. And I come from a Mexican family. My father was a farm worker. So I think that multiple voices, different faces, same stories. And that's where we are in the world right now. So that we would connect UC Davis. I worked at Sac State for 20 years in teacher education. So that everyone we're marching, but sometimes we feel like we're out there alone. And my area is language and literacy and brain research and how it applies to affecting struggling learners and readers, so that we can bring the education. But your title is on this page for your next session. And hopefully my prayer, and for you, I really appreciate your clarity in your prayers, so that the clarity in my prayer is, yes, that the next session would have that open.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, I think we'll move back down to where we had the breakfast area, and then maybe people would like to speak with you more one-on-one. So.